and I'm just, my face just turns bright red. I just want to die. It was the worst experience ever. And you know, it's harmless because there's no one we know there, no one bothers. But slowly over time, I think it's like a little bit of poison every day, and you finally build up resistance. I think we did a good job. He did a good job in some ways of making sure that we would never feel as embarrassed as he could possibly make us. So that was a very powerful influence that he had on us. And that extended throughout his life, even past our childhood. He was definitely one to not be afraid to fart and belch in public when needed, to embarrass us. We would go to restaurants, and he would teach us, when we go to San Diego, there's a restaurant that we would go to, and he would take the sugar packets on forks and spoons and launch them into the air so that they would hit the ceiling. And he had no shame whatsoever. Waitresses would come around, they'd kind of give us a quizzical look. He'd be playing around with forks and spoons, but that was the kind of person that he was. He was really playful, and he wanted to protect us. And part of that was, in I think his own way, doing these things so that we'd be more comfortable with ourselves later on in life and growing up. There are some other kind of strange things that he did that again made sense later on. When I was growing up, Katie and I, one of our favorite things to do actually was going to Uncle Marty's house for Christmas. And part of the reason why was we loved playing Nintendo 64 with Hunter and Spencer. And we absolutely loved playing GoldenEye. And it was something that, I remember for years that would be some of the happiest moments that we had coming together as a family and just having fun. And we were kind of jealous because Hunter and Spencer had an N64 for a couple of years before us. And every time my sister and I and my mom would go to Costco or Sam's Club, we'd pass by the racks and they have huge sections with just tons of N64 packages. And every time we would go, my sister and I would look at my dad and say, "Oh man, wouldn't it be great if you got an N64? Oh, is it coming for Christmas? Oh." We were really excited. And every single time that we went, he would just stoically just say, "Nope, not today, move on, move forward." And the times where we did it was after we'd already forgotten about it, after our souls were crushed and we had given up and thought, there's no way he's getting an N64, there's no way he's going to get this for us. And one day we'd go to Costco, Sam's Club, and he'd just put it in the cart. And he'd say, "Oh, I want it for myself." Oh. This isn't for you guys, this is my N64. You guys can play it sometimes if you want. And that was kind of his way of making sure that he supported us in the childhood that we wanted without spoiling us, which was, I think, pretty impressive, and I think he did a pretty good job of that. Later on, he did the same thing with pretty much every game system we ever owned. It was always a case of us kind of hoping and wanting and wishing and applying and Christmas lists and that kind of stuff, and it'd always just be a surprise out of the blue because he didn't want it to be that he would just always give in to our every desire and want. Similarly, he had a kind of special approach with one of my passions growing up was playing basketball, and we had a basketball hoop outside in our driveway in Torrance. And every day after school, I would come home and I'd ask my mom and dad to move the cars out of the driveway so that I could shoot hoops. And there were a lot of times early on where he would come out and he'd play basketball with me, and we'd play one-on-one. And this is when I'm like 11 years old. I'm like 4'6". I'm just completely hopeless against a guy who's 6 foot tall, 200 pounds, and he's ruthless. He's not the type of person to take it easy on you or make you feel good about yourself. He would just completely cream you. I would try and shoot the basketball, and he'd block it in my face, the ball would go dancing down the street. And I really appreciate that because he wanted me, he didn't want to take it easy on me. It wasn't about winning, it was about the effort, it was about having fun, it wasn't about the result. And over the years, I got older and I got better at basketball and I got a little bit taller. And it became a little bit easier for me to have a chance against him. The games that were usually like 21-5 or 21-7, they became 21-15, 21-16, and eventually got to a point where pretty regularly I could beat him. And this was around high school or so. And I don't think it was a coincidence that around that time, he stopped playing basketball.
Oh boy.
And it's I'm sure part of it was probably pride, but I think the truth of the matter is that he didn't want to give me the satisfaction of constantly beating him. And you know, it was kind of sad playing by myself, but luckily I had my mom, and she had no problem letting me beat her up all the time. So we would always play basketball outside and not keep track of the score. But all this kind of adds up to the single greatest truth about my father. And as much as he would complain about things here and there, and my mom and dad would talk a lot about the struggles they were having at work, he was so incredibly passionate about everything he did. And that's something that has really resonated strongly with me and everyone in our family. He wouldn't have spent 31 years here if that wasn't the case. And I know how much everyone knows he enjoyed fishing and working here at the airport, but above all else, my father loved his family. He certainly loved me and was very proud of me. He loved his daughter, my sister Katie, his little princess, even more. And there was no doubt about that. We were his pride and joy, and he would do anything to make us happy. Looking back at old photo albums and pictures of our childhood, it's no surprise, especially when you look at the slideshow, that he was at his happiest when he was with us. And you can see that in everything that he did and all the pictures and videos of him. Whether it be showing us a new experience or taking us on a grand adventure with him, it was always something that he enjoyed doing with us together. And to give you an idea of how important his family was to us and how passionate my parents were about our upbringing, my mom was telling me the story the other day of how we were talking about Disneyland, and we were talking about how frequently we went to Disneyland and Disney World as a kid. I thought it was really poignant and touching that my mom said that it was really important strategically that my parents took us to Disneyland as kids before we went to kindergarten, because they never wanted us to go to kindergarten and to have the other kindergartners say that they went to Disneyland that we hadn't. And I think that was just another sign of his strategizing, but also his love and his thoughtfulness and how much he cared about us and having the kind of upbringing in childhood that he wanted to make sure that we had that he didn't necessarily have for himself. He loved his son-in-law Nick and granddaughter Felicity, that's for sure. And as he got older, like LaFonda said, he would often tease us about having grandchildren as soon as possible. Wasn't sure that it was at 16, but I definitely remember it was around that time. It was pretty early on. There was a lot of pressure to move things forward on that front so that my parents could have a little kid to play around with. And I'm really fortunate that he had the time to spend the couple months that he did with Felicity in these past couple of months. But most of all, my father loved his wife, Kathy, Momo, our mother. Marriages come in all shapes and sizes and many different forms. My parents met when they were just in high school, and my father was just 21 when they married. If you look at Google or any modern statistics, they'll tell you that only 2% of marriages between high school sweethearts exist. And any marriage that starts in a person's teenage years has a greater than 50-50 chance of divorce. But my parents' love could not be any more different than that. They were more than just lovers or parents, but they were truly each other's best friend and partner in life. And I know his absence weighs most heavily on our mother. And there are countless tales of his love for my mom, but one particular one stands out to me. It's not particularly memorable because it was a specific event or occasion, but I remember there was a family hiking trip of some sort. We're on a weekend. We were going to Palos Verdes, and we went hiking. We went to the seashores there. We went to the caves. We were walking down them. And as we were going back to the car, my mom, Momo, was feeling a little lightheaded, feeling like she was going to pass out. And, you know, we're not sure, you know, my family, we never dealt with medical emergencies or anything like that. We never had any problems like that. And my sister and I don't think we really knew what to make of it. We just didn't think it was a big deal. And we got into the car, and my mom was feeling really lightheaded. And I think my sister and I were hungry or something, and we were talking about where we wanted to go for breakfast or something like that. And I'll never forget the look that my dad had, and just it was like a light switch flipped. and he would do anything to protect my mom, anything in the world. And it scared me in a lot of ways because of how fiercely passionate he was, but I think that was one of the only times I really remember my dad getting mad at us and taking the time to make sure that my mom was all right. And that's the kind of person that he was. Despite spending nearly all my life in his presence, in many ways I feel like I was only beginning to scratch the surface of his inner workings. He worked hard to maintain that type of secrecy, and he never really let on what his kind of inner schemes or plans were, but you knew that there was something going on in that mind of his. It's really too bad that we all didn't have more time with him. There's never a good age to pass away, but it was certainly too soon for him. Despite not being a smoker, he had lung issues that affected him most of his adult life, and in a lot of ways, it taught us that life just isn't fair sometimes. He received a dual lung transplant that gave him an extra 6 years of life that we're really fortunate to have with him. But the anti-rejection medication that he needed for it was known to cause an increased risk of cancer. And that kind of led to where we are today. Anyone close to my father would know that he didn't care much for celebrations or ceremony. Holidays were only important insofar as there were opportunities to make his family and his children happy. And his own birthdays were intentionally particularly unmemorable. As my parents were dealing with the cancer diagnosis and treatment, he talked about how he didn't want a formal ceremony and that he'd rather just be cremated and throw it out in the dumpster. But even then, I remember us repeatedly telling us before this that whenever we brought up the scenario of his passing, he talked about how he really wanted to go out fishing and riding on the back of a great white shark. And I still hope in some way that we might be able to achieve that. You see, my dad never wanted anyone to feel sorry for him, even with his diagnosis and in the final months and years of his life. He languished at the thought of growing old, feeble, and weak, and he said he never wanted to get to that point, and he really meant it. Part of that was knowing that he wouldn't be able to do all the things that he loved, spend time with his family, to go fishing. But I think part of it was also that he understood that he had accomplished so much of everything he wanted to do in life. You could tell it was not just a struggle for him physically and mentally, but the fact that it took such a toll on our family. And he was tough as nails, and it definitely showed in his final months, something that I'll always remember. It was actually on my 25th birthday that my parents called me and let me know that my dad had the diagnosis of cancer. And I was really mad at my mom because I knew that she had been hiding this because she didn't want to make me feel bad. But I'm really glad that she did. And on that day, my parents talked about how fortunate they were and how glad they were that the lung transplant gave my dad an extra 5 or 6 years of life. And after that phone call, I was pissed. I was really mad. And the reason why I was mad is my dad was never a quitter. That's one of the things that stood out most to me. And after that phone call the next day, I called my mom and I told her, Mom, I'm really glad that you told me about what was going on. But I'm really pissed off because my dad is a fighter and I don't want him to have that attitude. I don't want him to give up. And sure enough, I'm sure my mom said something, but I know deep down inside he knew it as well. Over the next couple of weeks and months, I would come back every weekend or so and make sure that he was eating healthy. I would force feed him tofu even though he hated it. And my mom would make him protein shakes to keep his health up. And I'll always remember we went to the hospital one time when he was getting treatment. And he was talking to the doctors. And the doctor, one of our doctors in particular, there's a whole wonderful team of care partners at UCLA who did a wonderful job with my dad and caring for him. And but one of them had a particularly, not necessarily negative outlook, but was being upfront and honest with my dad about the situation and how things would probably end up in the next couple of months. And I always remember my dad saying that, well, he knows he's screwed, and but that he's going to fight it to the end because he knows that's what his family wants. That's the kind of person he was. He was incredibly selfless. He would do anything for us. And he truly did fight it to the end. But the reality is, even though he was taken from us far too soon, he really did accomplish everything that he wanted to do in life. He built a loving family, and he did everything in his power to make us happy. He cared for us and supported us in the best and worst of times. And he worked to ensure that even now, after his passing, we'd be supported for many, many years after. He fought to make sure my sister and I had the best possible opportunities in life and education growing up. And, we didn't turn out too bad. It's unfortunate that after going to school for aerospace engineering, and, a lot of people were badgering me and talking to me about working at SpaceX or NASA, I ended up designing video games for a living. But that's something that he was proud of because I followed my passions and I followed my dreams, regardless of circumstances. And I know that he's proud of me for living up to the ideals that he had for himself and his family. And likewise, I'm incredibly grateful for having his support and proud to have the type of parent that he was, both from himself and my mother. He traveled the world. He was constantly fishing, boating, or planning his next trip to do so. He saw his daughter fall in love, marry, and finally provide him with the joy of a granddaughter that he had longed for so long. Sorry, Dad, I got some catching up to do there, but we're working on it. Give it a couple of years, maybe. Although he was only able to spend a few months in our company, let's not dwell on the reality that will never be, and instead live in the moment, live in the present, and respect for my father's wishes. Today, we should celebrate and rejoice in the memory of my father and how he made such a positive impact on all of our lives. When my mother was thinking of plans for the memorial today, one thing that repeatedly struck out to her as something that was important to her was that she wanted everyone to gather together and tell stories about my father, so that we could share in the experiences and the wealth of his presence. So I asked